Hey guys, tonight we leave behind kings, knights, and towering castles. Instead, we're going somewhere much warmer, much quieter, and considerably more fragrant. Tonight, we step inside a medieval bakery, not for a few minutes, but for an entire day. From the first sleepy moments before sunrise, to the final loaf pulled from the oven long after everyone else has gone to bed. Because if there was one person almost every village depended upon, it was the baker. Imagine opening your eyes. It isn't morning yet. Not really. The stars are still shining above the rooftops. Most of the village is fast asleep. The chickens haven't begun making noise. Even the dogs seem too tired to bark. But your day has already begun. You are a baker, and bread waits for no one. Before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. Pull the blanket a little higher, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The cottage is completely dark. Only the faint glow of yesterday's dying embers remains inside the hearth. You kneel beside it. Your hands already know exactly what to do. A handful of dry straw, tiny pieces of wood, a careful breath, another. A thin ribbon of smoke curls upward. Then, a tiny orange flame appears, slowly, patiently. The fire begins another day. Modern kitchens come alive with the touch of a switch. Your kitchen requires patience. Every single morning. The bakery itself sits beside your home, built from thick stone walls that hold warmth remarkably well. At its center stands the greatest treasure you own, the oven. It isn't made of shiny steel. There are no buttons, no timers, no digital display quietly telling you exactly when the bread is ready. Instead, there is one enormous stone oven, its rounded ceiling blackened by years of smoke, its floor worn smooth by countless loaves. It weighs several tons. It may even outlive your grandchildren. But first, it must become hot enough, and that takes time, lots of time. Long before anyone smells fresh bread drifting through the village, you are feeding logs into the hungry mouth of the oven, hour after hour. The flames slowly heat every stone. The walls store that warmth like giant batteries. Only when the stones themselves have absorbed enough heat can baking begin. Until then, you wait, while the fire works. Outside, the eastern sky slowly changes from black to deep blue, then soft gray. One bird begins singing, then another. The village is waking. Meanwhile, inside the bakery, you prepare the dough. There are no electric mixers, no measuring cups, no digital kitchen scales. Everything depends upon experience. You pour coarse flour into a large wooden trough. The flour isn't perfectly white. In fact, it is closer to brown than anything sold in modern supermarkets. Tiny pieces of bran remain mixed throughout. Occasionally, even tiny fragments from the millstone find their way into the flour. Medieval bread is hearty, dense, filling. It asks your teeth to work for every bite. You add water, a little salt, then yesterday's sourdough starter. The starter is alive. A quiet community of natural yeast that has been carefully preserved day after day. Some bakeries keep the same starter alive for years, perhaps decades. It becomes almost like another member of the household. Lose it, and tomorrow's bread becomes much harder to make. Your hands disappear into the mixture. Cold water, soft flour, sticky dough. You begin kneading. Push, fold, turn, repeat. Again, push, fold, turn. The rhythm never changes. After thousands of mornings, you no longer think about it. Your hands simply remember. Outside, the first villagers begin walking through the streets. Children rub sleep from their eyes. Farmers head toward the fields. A blacksmith lights his own fire across the square. Soon, the entire village will smell fresh bread. To them, it means breakfast. To you, it means the longest part of the day is only just beginning. Let's talk about flour. Because without flour, nothing else in your day matters. Imagine stepping outside just after sunrise with a large linen sack resting across your shoulder. The morning air is cool. The village is finally awake. Smoke rises lazily from dozens of chimneys. Dogs wander through muddy lanes hoping someone drops breakfast. You are heading toward the mill. Every baker depends upon it, before modern factories, before enormous flour mills powered by electricity, nearly every village relied upon one building standing beside flowing water, the mill. Long before you arrive, you hear it, the steady splash of the water wheel, the slow creaking of heavy wooden gears, the deep rumble of massive millstones turning against one another. It is a sound almost everyone finds comforting. As long as the mill is turning, bread remains possible. Farmers arrive carrying. The leftovers rarely stay on the shelves for long anyway. A young shepherd arrives just before sunset. He has spent the entire day on the hills beyond the village. His boots are dusty, his shoulders tired. He smiles as he buys the final round loaf. "It smells wonderful," he says. You thank him. Simple words, simple moments. Yet after years behind the counter, they never become ordinary. The bakery grows quiet once again. You close the heavy wooden door. The small brass bell rings one final time. Silence returns. Inside, the oven is still warm, not blazing hot anymore, just comfortably warm, perfect for baking things that require gentle heat. Perhaps oatcakes, perhaps small biscuits for your own family, or maybe a simple apple tart when autumn has been especially generous. Nothing goes to waste. Even the oven's fading warmth finds another purpose. You sit beside it for a few moments, not because you're finished, but because you've earned a short rest. The warmth eases tired muscles. Your hands are lightly dusted with flour despite washing them several times. Somehow, a baker is never completely free of flour. It settles into your sleeves, your apron, even your hair. Children sometimes laugh when they notice. You laugh with them. It comes with the profession. Outside, the church bell marks the end of another working day. Families return home carrying baskets of bread beneath their arms. Soon those loaves will appear beside bowls of warm pottage, fresh cheese, butter, or perhaps a little honey if someone has been especially fortunate. You imagine each household gathering around its table. Parents breaking bread, children reaching eagerly for the warm center, grandparents quietly smiling. Your work becomes part of their evening. Most of them will never think about the hours required to create each loaf. And that's perfectly fine. The best crafts often go unnoticed. People simply expect them to be there, just as they expect the sunrise each morning. You take one final look around the bakery. The workbench is clean. The wooden bowls are stacked neatly. Tomorrow's flour is ready. The sourdough starter rests quietly beneath its cloth. Firewood waits beside the oven. Everything is exactly where it should be. That feeling, more than anything, brings satisfaction. Not wealth, not fame. Simply knowing tomorrow can begin without confusion. As darkness settles over the village, you gently stir the embers inside the oven one last time. A soft orange glow answers. Tomorrow, long before anyone else wakes, you'll be here again, lighting another fire, mixing another batch of dough, filling another village with the smell of fresh bread. And somehow, after hundreds, perhaps thousands, of mornings, you still wouldn't trade this life for any other. Because being a medieval baker wasn't merely a job. It was becoming part of the daily rhythm of an entire community. And tomorrow, that rhythm begins again. Let's talk about market day. Because not every loaf you bake stays inside your own village. Imagine waking even earlier than usual. If that sounds impossible, it almost is. The stars are still bright overhead. The village is silent. Only your footsteps and the soft creak of a wooden cart break the quiet. Today is market day. Once every week, or perhaps every fortnight, depending on where you live, nearby villages gather in one place. For a baker, it's one of the busiest days of the month. You stack fresh loaves carefully inside woven baskets. Each basket is lined with clean linen to keep the bread warm for as long as possible. Round loaves at the bottom, smaller rolls on top. Nothing is rushed. A damaged loaf earns fewer coins. The horse is harnessed. Or perhaps a sturdy donkey if your bakery is small. With one gentle tug on the reins, the journey begins. The road isn't smooth. There are no paved highways, only narrow dirt tracks winding through fields, forests, and rolling hills. Every bump reminds you to secure the baskets carefully. Fresh bread deserves a gentle ride. As dawn slowly brightens the countryside, other travelers begin joining the road. A farmer carrying vegetables, a shepherd leading sheep, a potter balancing stacks of clay bowls, a weaver transporting colorful cloth. One by one, the road becomes busier. Everyone greets each other warmly. Market day feels almost like a celebration. After an hour, perhaps two, the market town comes into view. You hear it before you see it. Laughter, conversations, animals, the steady hum of hundreds of people gathering together. For someone who spends most days inside a quiet bakery, it feels wonderfully alive. Stalls line both sides of the square. Bright fabrics flutter gently in the morning breeze. Wooden barrels overflow with apples. Bundles of herbs perfume the air. Cheesemakers proudly display large wheels of cheese. Beekeepers offer jars of golden honey. Fishmongers call out today's catch. The entire market feels like a living tapestry. You find your usual place. Customers already know where to look. The smell of fresh bread travels surprisingly far. Soon, the first people arrive. Some purchase a single loaf. Others buy enough for an entire family. Travelers often buy extra bread for journeys ahead. A warm loaf wrapped in cloth remains a reliable companion for many miles. Children wander between the stalls with wide eyes. Everything fascinates them. Wooden too. Geese, bright ribbons, tiny carved whistles. One little girl pauses beside your table. She stares quietly at a tray of sweet buns dusted lightly with honey. Her father notices. He smiles. After pretending to think for a moment, he buys one. The girl's face lights up as though she's been handed a royal treasure. Moments like these quietly become your favorite part of market day. Not the coins, not the busy crowds, just simple happiness shared over something as ordinary as bread. As the afternoon passes, your baskets grow lighter. One by one, the loaves disappear. By the time the church bell rings in the distance, only a few crumbs remain inside the linen cloths. Another successful market day. The return journey feels different. The cart is lighter. The evening air cooler. Birds glide low across golden fields as the sun begins setting behind the hills. You arrive home tired, but satisfied. Tomorrow, the market square will return to its ordinary quiet, and so will your bakery. Yet every market day reminds you of something important. You aren't simply baking bread for one family, or even one village. You're feeding an entire community, one warm loaf at a time. Now let's talk about something every medieval baker quietly depended upon: the seasons. Because although your bakery looks much the same throughout the year, the world outside changes everything. Imagine waking on a crisp autumn morning. A thin layer of mist hangs over the fields. The harvest has recently ended. Wagons loaded with sacks of grain slowly arrive from nearby farms. For you, this is one of the happiest times of the year. Fresh wheat, fresh rye, fresh barley. The flour will be at its finest. The village feels optimistic. Granaries are filling. Families smile a little more easily. Everyone hopes the coming winter will be a comfortable one. You inspect each sack carefully. Not every harvest is equal. Some grain is dry and golden. Some carries a little too much moisture. Years of experience have taught you exactly what to look for. Good bread begins long before the dough is mixed. It begins here, with the grain itself. As autumn fades, winter quietly arrives. Your mornings become colder, much colder. The walk to the bakery happens beneath a sky still filled with stars. Your breath forms little clouds in the air. Even touching the wooden door feels icy. Fortunately, the oven changes everything. Once the fire has been burning for an hour, the bakery becomes the warmest place in the entire village. Neighbors sometimes linger a little longer than necessary, not only because they enjoy fresh bread, because they enjoy the warmth. Children especially love winter mornings inside the bakery. Their cheeks are red from the cold outside. They stretch their hands toward the oven. Steam rises gently from their damp wool gloves. Someone always smiles. Spring brings another change. Rain. Lots of rain. The roads become muddy. Farmers grow busier each day preparing their fields. Your customers often arrive with muddy boots and tired faces, yet there is excitement in the air. Another growing season has begun. Fresh herbs appear once again. Wild flowers return to the hillsides. Birdsong fills the mornings. Even the sourdough seems happier. Or perhaps, that's simply your imagination. Summer transforms the bakery yet again. Now the oven becomes almost overwhelming. Outside, the air is already warm. Inside, the stone oven turns the room into a furnace. Sweat gathers across your forehead before sunrise. By midday, your apron feels surprisingly heavy. You drink water often. There are no electric fans, no cool air flowing from hidden vents, only open windows, a gentle breeze if you're fortunate, and patience. Lots of patience. Sometimes, the village children offer to help carry baskets in exchange for a small bread roll. You happily agree. Their laughter fills the bakery. Flour somehow ends up on everyone's faces, including yours. The children find this endlessly amusing. So do you. As one season quietly gives way to another, you realize something. You've measured your entire life through bread. Not calendars, not clocks. The smell of fresh harvest grain, the warmth of the oven in winter, the muddy boots of spring, the long golden evenings of summer. Each loaf tells you exactly where you are in the year. Each season leaves its own quiet fingerprint on your work. Tomorrow, the weather may change. The village may change. Children will grow taller. New families will arrive. Old customers will become grandparents. Yet one thing remains beautifully familiar. Long before sunrise, the baker will once again light the fire. And another ordinary day. We'll begin with the comforting smell of fresh bread. Let's slow down for a little while, because after years of baking, you begin to notice something rather surprising. Bread tells stories, not with words, but with people. Imagine standing behind your wooden counter on an ordinary morning. The first customer arrives before sunrise. It is always the same old farmer. He buys one small rye loaf every single day. Never two, never none. Exactly one. You no longer need to ask what he wants. The loaf is already waiting before he reaches the counter. He smiles, places 2 small coins on the table, nods once, and quietly walks home. A few minutes later, the village schoolmaster appears. He prefers lighter, wheat bread whenever he can afford it. Not because it tastes dramatically different, simply because he enjoys it. You wrap the loaf in linen. He thanks you politely, then pauses to ask whether you've heard the latest news from the nearby town. The bakery has become the village newspaper, except no newspapers actually exist here. News arrives one conversation at a time, a merchant passing through, a traveler stopping for breakfast, a farmer returning from market. Tiny pieces of information slowly spread from person to person. Long before lunchtime, almost everyone knows. Not because anyone is gossiping, simply because people naturally talk while buying bread. Children arrive next. Some carry baskets nearly as large as themselves. Their parents have trusted them with an important job. Don't drop the bread. Most succeed. Some occasionally become distracted. One little boy spends several minutes watching chickens wander across the village square. By the time he remembers why he came, his mother has already appeared at the bakery door looking amused rather than annoyed. Everyone laughs, even the boy. Moments like these become part of village memory. Years later, people still remember the child who was so fascinated by chickens that he almost forgot the bread. A traveling musician visits during the afternoon. His clothes are dusty from the road. A small wooden lute hangs across his shoulder. Instead of paying immediately, he offers something different. A song. You agree. Within minutes, several customers quietly gather inside the bakery. The music fills the warm room. Someone begins tapping their foot. A child starts humming along despite never hearing the tune before. For a few wonderful moments, the bakery becomes something entirely unexpected. A concert hall. No tickets. No stage. Just neighbors sharing music while the smell of fresh bread drifts gently through the air. When the final note fades, you hand the musician a warm loaf. Both of you leave smiling. Not every exchange requires coins. Sometimes, kindness keeps a village together just as effectively. As evening approaches, the final customer arrives. A young mother carrying a sleeping baby wrapped in wool. She apologizes for being late. You simply hand her the last loaf still warm from the oven. No apology needed. Tomorrow, you'll bake another. The bakery falls quiet once again. The shelves stand empty. Outside, the sun slowly slips below the rooftops. You realize something comforting. Thousands of loaves have passed through your hands over the years. Most people will forget exactly how they tasted, but they'll remember how the bakery made them feel. Warm, welcome, home. And perhaps that was always the baker's greatest recipe. Not flour, not water, not salt, but giving an ordinary village one familiar place it could always depend upon. Let's finish our day together. Because after everything you've done, after the flour, the fire, the kneading, the waiting, the baking, and the endless conversations across your wooden counter, there is finally a moment when the bakery becomes completely still. Imagine standing alone inside the workshop. The last customer has gone home. The wooden door closes with a soft thud. Outside, the village slowly disappears into the evening. A few chickens settle onto their perches. The church bell rings one final time before night. Smoke curls gently from stone chimneys as families gather around their evening meals. Many of those meals begin with bread that passed through your hands only hours ago. You will probably never see those moments. You won't watch parents tear warm loaves into smaller pieces for their children. You won't hear the laughter around their tables. You won't know which traveler is carrying your bread toward the next village, or which lonely shepherd is enjoying the final slice beneath the stars. But somehow, that doesn't matter, because your work was never meant to be remembered. It was meant to be shared. You return to the great stone oven. Its fierce heat has faded into a gentle warmth. The fire that roared before sunrise is now nothing more than glowing embers quietly fading into ash. You take a wooden brush and sweep the oven floor one final time. Tomorrow deserves a clean beginning. The mixing bowls are stacked neatly. The wooden kneading trough is spotless. The flour bins are covered. The linen cloths are folded with care. Then, you uncover the sourdough starter. It has quietly come alive again during the day. Tiny bubbles rise beneath its surface. You smile without even realizing it. For years, this small bowl has been your silent partner. It asks for almost nothing. A little flour, a little water, a little patience. In return, it helps feed an entire village. You gently feed it once more before covering it with fresh cloth. Now it rests, just as you soon will. You step outside the bakery. The air feels wonderfully cool after standing beside the oven all day. Above you, thousands of stars fill the sky. Without electric lights, the heavens seem impossibly bright. The Milky Way stretches overhead like a pale river. Somewhere nearby, an owl calls into the darkness. A dog barks once before settling down again. Everything else is quiet. You think about tomorrow, not with worry, simply with certainty. Tomorrow, there will be flour to sift, water to carry, firewood to stack, dough to knead, loaves to bake, children to greet, neighbors to laugh with, travelers to welcome. And another sunrise that begins exactly the same way this one did. Some people might call such a life ordinary, but perhaps ordinary things are the ones that matter most. History remembers kings, generals, explorers, and famous scholars. Yet kingdoms could not function without ordinary people quietly doing extraordinary work every single day. The blacksmith, the miller, the shepherd, the carpenter, and the baker. You may never appear in a history book. Your name may disappear long before the next century arrives. But your bread became part of thousands of ordinary mornings. And sometimes, that is a greater legacy than fame itself. So as the village drifts peacefully to sleep, you close the heavy wooden door one final time. The little brass bell gives a soft, familiar ring. The bakery falls silent. The oven cools. The flour settles. And somewhere, long before dawn, has even begun to think about returning. Tomorrow is already waiting. Now, pull the blanket a little higher. Let the quiet settle around you, and drift gently into sleep, knowing that somewhere in medieval Europe, a baker will soon wake to begin it all again.